Hello there and welcome to another BoBeats video, and today we are checking out this little guy here. This is a multi-filter, an analog multi-filter from Stylophone in the same form factor as their drone synth that you might have seen here on the channel before. In today's video, I'm going to explain what the DF-8 is all about and also show you a couple of different ways that you could be using it. And a big thank you to Stylophone for sending this device over. Now, let's listen to a few examples here of what this device can sound like. Let's start with an overview. We have two filters here. They are identical, and there are 8 filter types per filter. We have 2 envelopes. They are also loopable, meaning that you can use them like a sort of like an LFO. And then over here we have a mixer section with levels for the 2 filters. Each of the filters also have noise. There's sample and hold. We have delay with level here, time depth, and repeats control. So I've connected the form here into the first filter. Got a very aggressive filter here, low pass filter. These are from the Gen R8. It's a synthesizer that Stylophone released a while back. So we got a nice band pass filter here. High pass, which is really nice, and we'll get to that later, for boosting the low end of, say, drum machines, for example. And then we have this notch filter. And the 4 other filters, which are based on a different filter design, are just a bit smoother. And what's really cool is that these 3 filters here, the Bandpass Plus, Notch Plus, and Bandstep Plus, are actually combinations of 2 filters, and especially the Bandstop Plus is really cool because it has 2 resonant peaks, I believe. It's like a dual peak filter, if I'm understanding it correctly. You can hear how it emphasizes not just one part of the frequency spectrum. One negative I did notice in my testing is that it's a quite noisy device. It doesn't have a ton of gain, so you need to really make sure that the level that's coming in is pretty loud, because if you turn up the main level here too much, it gets quite noisy actually. On the filters, we have CV control for the cutoff, the VCA, we have an audio input and output. So you can run the output here. Let's turn down the level of filter 1 here and into the second filter and turn up that level. Now we can use the sample and hold here to control the filters for us. It has a slew setting, making it more smooth. And you can also sync it, and there's also an output here that we can use for something. And we can bring in some delay. We have level control, time control, depth here, and you can also use sample and hold or envelope to control the depth. So it's envelope number 2 here. And envelope number 2 is set to be looped. And you can make all manner of weird noises with this. You can also use the filter in stereo with this switch here, panning one filter left, one right, and the delay, I think, is center. Each of the filters also have noise, and we could even put them left and right. Ooh. And make some ambient soundscapes here. We have a switch here which determines if envelope 1 is used also for filter number 2, and then we have cutoff link which links the two filters together. And over here we can invert envelope 1 or 2, and we can also turn on or off the VCA. So if we turn on the VCA, there's no sound because we now have to trigger the sounds manually. And you can trigger the sounds in a number of ways using these buttons here to open the gates here, or using a sample and hold output. You can also just turn the envelopes here into looped envelopes. And we can turn the other one on. It starts triggering. And here we also have settings for linear or exponential for the envelopes. There's also gate inputs and envelope outputs. And if you're not using an external sound source, there are two primary ways of creating sounds with the DF-8. One is by using the noise and the delay. I mean, technically you could use the delay to create sounds as well, because you can get some really like interesting sounds if you turn up repeats, for example. But that's not the second way. The second way is using resonance. And later in the video I'm going to show you can even turn this into like a weird little drum machine of sorts. So by turning up resonance, we can turn down the noise here. The filters start to self-oscillate. And that way you can create some weird experimental sounds. So we can take the sample and hold output here, and we can patch it into gate 1 and gate 2. And it can turn into utter madness. And the unit can also be battery powered. I think it's 6 AA batteries, comes with batteries, but it doesn't come with a power supply, but you can use one. And there's also a little speaker here. Now the speaker is, it's nothing to write home about, just on the little drone synth, but it's nice to have in a pinch. And you can of course hook up a MIDI keyboard that has a gate and CV output, and then use the gate to either trigger the VCA directly here, or trigger the envelope that then triggers the filter here, and then use pitch out into the cutoff to control the pitch. So the next thing that I want to try is using the DF-8 as a master stereo filter. So here I got the Digitech 2 stereo out into each of the filters. This is set to stereo, no delay, and we can do just a standard low pass. Add in some resonance if we want to. To the notched filter, add in some resonance, add in some noise, using the cutoff link here, you can actually use one knob to control both, but I did have to tweak the second filter a bit to get it to like align properly with the first one. Yeah, it's a little finicky, but it works. And we can of course use it as a high-pass filter for transitions. We can add in the delay. Or why not do something more experimental with some noise. So I think that using it as a master filter can work pretty well, but don't expect it to be like a super clean, non-noisy solution. If you want something more higher end, you have to look at something like the analog heat, for example. Another way to use the DF-8 is as an additional filter to another synthesizer. It works best with a monophonic or duophonic synth, since there's two filters here, because if you add the filter at the end of the chain of a polyphonic synth, it just becomes like a master filter because it's not a per voice filter. So here's the sound without any filter. And here's with. Let's try the notched filter. Nice. And when I'm using the filters here in series, I'm switching on envelope 1 link, meaning that I'm using envelope number 1 here to control both filters. So we have no filter and width. Or you could choose to run the filters in parallel, so I'm sending the same source into both of them, and you can get some really cool like binaural type sounds. And if you're listening on a smartphone speaker, of course this won't translate at all. No filter. Add in some delay. And of course, if you want to spice it up, just switch it from envelope to sample and hold for the filter control. So adding this analog filter to pretty much any synthesizer is one of the things you can do, but it's not the only thing. If I were to pick one use case for the DF-8 that I think it's really good at, it's being a companion to a drum machine, especially one without a filter. So let's listen. Dry sound, no filtering. Let's turn on the filters. Let's add in some delay. And we can try and set the first filter to something other than a high pass. Ooh, what's going on here? Interesting. I don't know. It's just a bit of fun. Like, you can find some interesting stuff here. And I do really like the happy accidents that you come across while you're just tweaking away. So here the sound is coming into filter 1, going out here into filter 2. I'm also using envelope number 1 here into the cutoff of the second filter. And I'm taking sample and hold out into the envelope. You can see it's getting triggered, and that affects the filter cutoff. And we also have this knob here, which uses the sample and hold to affect the cutoff of the second filter. So one thing I really like about minimalist devices is that they force you to think creatively, because there aren't a ton of functions and features. So here I have a kick being triggered by this envelope here, it's looped. And then I have this weird bassline thing going on here, which is being triggered here by the second envelope. It's really not something that I could use for my music, but I don't know. It brings me a bit of joy just sitting down playing with it. And after a bit of tweaking and some coffee, you end up with something completely different. And while tweaking, I realized that you can take the envelope output here and then put it into the sync input, which then clocks the sample and hold, putting it sort of in tempo with everything else. You can come up with something like this. I call it the after party. Very tired drummer hitting the kick drum, and then we have a slightly drunk synth player playing something on top of it. We got R2D2 being chased by Dallas jammers that want him to listen to their Dallas jams. Or you could just bring in noise and try and create some sort of percussive element, I suppose, on top of the kick. Or why not use both for kicks? I call this one my alarm clock meeting Berghain. And this is me waking up to the reality that I'm never getting into Berghain anyway. Or you can turn it into this quite random drum machine. That was my little experimentation with the DF-8. Overall, I'm quite happy with it. Negative is that it's a little bit noisy, especially if you have a source coming into it that isn't very loud, because it doesn't really amplify the sound that much. So when you crank the main output, it does tend to get a little noisy. It's not like unbearably noisy, but just don't expect it to be like totally clean sounding. If you want something like very high end, I would go for like an analog heat. There's also a really good stereo filter, a Polyvox filter from Bonurmimusic that I reviewed before. That one could be very interesting to check out. In my testing, I noticed that the filter tracking for the Gen R8 filters wasn't like 100%. It wasn't like a big deal, and maybe it's because I'm on a prototype, but I thought it would be worth mentioning. I should also note that you can rack mount this, and of course, something that I haven't delved into is that it's of course very usable with any sort of Eurorack setup. And whether or not you should buy it comes down to a simple question. Do you need a dual filter box like this? I can see a ton of use cases. Hopefully I've showed you that in today's video. There's plenty of situations where it could be fun to just have an additional filter or two, but it's also something that I think most people can live without, like in a Dallas setup. It's not some necessity to make it work, but it could be fun. So yeah, give it some thought, let me know in the comments what you think, and as always, have a great day. Talk to you all later.